Hi, this is Moonshine. So this episode we're going to go over muzzle length in proportion to the face. So when it comes to animal faces, it can often be pretty tough to figure out how far that muzzle is supposed to stick out, and also a couple other features on the face. In this video, I'm going to talk somewhat on specifics of muzzle proportions, but I'm also going to go over some tips and tricks on how to figure these types of things out on your own, how to study images, and also how to apply them in your artwork in a way that's not stealing or copying in any way. So to start off, I'm going to talk about how to find a good resource image. To be honest, the best way you can go about this is to find an image on Google or Pinterest, and keep in mind that images such as these you might just pull off the internet. Someone did take this photo. That doesn't mean photography in itself is an art, and you can't just copy line by line, pixel by pixel, whatever the image is. It'd be the exact same thing as if you just traced someone's artwork without their permission, so on and so forth. However, there is nothing wrong with looking at photographs taken and use them as study points for learning how to continue your artwork in a way that has a more natural flow and has more species-accurate dimensions. So, to find out a good image for this, what I typically do is I'll type in whatever species it is that I'm trying to research or study, and I'll do a simple search and I'll try to find a front-on view and a side view. Sometimes if I need more, I'll look up, just keep scrolling through images till I find different angles that help me visualize what it is I need to accomplish. So here I have a border collie that has a more front-on visual as well as a profile visual. And so how I go about studying these is just lots of quick sketches. You can never have too many quick sketches in studying. So I normally start off with a simple circle. I usually have a more thin line to start off with. It's a circle, and you can see that circle's here and here. So also what I'll typically do when I'm figuring out what the proportions are on an image, if I'm having trouble translating it down, is I will draw over the image. No, I'm not using these lines for my artwork. I'm simply using these to break down what it is that I'm seeing in a way that's more easy for myself to understand. So here you can see I'm tracing where the muzzle is, and this is tracing, but I'm not you'll take note, I'm not going to release this as my own artwork. This is simply a study session where I'm trying to figure out what it is about this face that makes it species specific. So you can see where I traced over the muzzle, the outline, divide the head, put the halfway mark in the circle, the ears, stuff like that. So from this you can gather that border collies have a pretty decent sized muzzle compared to the face that tends to hang a little bit lower than the center of the head. You can gather the size of the cheek fluff and all of the good stuff. The ears, you can tell that they kind of have not just a triangle shape, they almost have like a square shape jutting out of the head. So if it continued on, it would just rest on the midline of the face. And then over in this profile view, it can help define more of what you're seeing. Also, a variety of images does help in regards to avoiding using the exact same image every time. Can lead to often adapting to only seeing the same characteristics of the individual. So like this specific border collie is very fluffy and has really long hair. While at the same time, this one has more short fur or hair on the face. And that those are things that are different individual based on individual. It's not really a species specific thing. While at the same time, I can see that these ears having a somewhat box shape is pretty consistent across the board. The same with the eyes, where they're almost that midline. Also, you can see that the mouth drops low some. In regards to the actual length of the muzzle towards the face, that will vary based on what angle you're seeing the dog from. So this angle, the muzzle is almost the same length as the visible forehead. And this one, it is almost the same in proportion to each other but you'll notice that this length is not the same as this length. And to help illustrate that, I'll actually put a little line. Ooh, that is a really big line. And then I'll move it over to show how short that line when it is viewed from the front is compared to how it's viewed from the side. So when it comes to studying a species, you want to make sure you understand how things relate in proportion to each other and not on a consistent level. So in proportion to each other, this muzzle is about the same length as the forehead, is a pretty common trend, but when it comes to rotating in different angles, that can vary, but they'll still be pretty similar to each other. Also, the mouth is about at that angle, and the nose is pretty triangular from the side, and from the front, it is also somewhat trapezoid shaped. And so then when it comes to the next step of what you would do, is you would then take what you learned and you would apply it to mentally creating your own image. So yet again, you don't want to just trace and copy exactly what you see. So what I'll do is I'll use the information I gathered from these two to then draw my own image. So what I've learned is that the head base is very circular, so I've got that going. Divide it in half so I can figure out where the eye is. This arc right here will help me determine which angle the face is pointing. So probably do a 3/4 view because I already have a profile and almost full front view covered. I know the ears kind of start right where the eyes are as well. So I put somewhat of a vague idea of an eye for there. Square, another square. They have a little bit of a point to it, so I'll make sure I have that. Just put some more markers. Put the cheek fluff. This kind of forms an arc right here. The muzzle starts right between the eyes. And that's pretty true with almost any animal that has a canine or feline-like muzzle, is it starts right between the eyes. That's where the bridge transforms into a muzzle. And another thing that helps with the placement of muzzle, because that's another thing I see a lot of people have, not really wrong, but slightly off, and it can really distort how the face looks, is how that muzzle comes out towards the viewer. And one thing that helps with that is I typically just draw a circle so it's like a tube, but I also draw out where it connects. That often can help a lot. So drawing where this connects as if it was some 3D image and you could see all the little lines and layers can help figure out where in the world that nose goes and where the actual front division is on that nose. And I'll often draw a half line and a front line as if I'm just starting another head, but instead I'm plotting out where the nose is. And so now you can see that I have a pretty good structure starting on a border collie's head, and I'm not just copying these images. I'm taking what it is that I'm seeing, I'm converting it into simple shapes in a way that I can learn. And don't think that you always have to do simple shapes, because once you get used to something, you can do a circle and you can pretty much go from there, just directly drawing general lines and how you want them. And with that, you can apply your styles, such as things like if you want large ears, small ears, big eyes, small eyes, how you want to look. Images that you use and find are often a good baseline for what you want to do. I often tend to, once I study something enough, I don't need to refer to the image all the time. If it's at this point, if it's a dog for me, I can almost always from my mind remember some of those key things, like it's a more square muzzle, it's more long, it's still pretty wide and takes up about half or even, sometimes even more of the face, then depending on what species it is, while cats, which I'll show you next, have a lot different facial structure. And those types of things, once you study over and over and over, you don't even need images to look at. you'll be able to just remember off the top of your head, or it just feels correct, and when you start working on it, you just kind of, things fall into place and you don't even realize that you're using those in the future. So I'm going to move on to felines. Felines have a very different facial structure. We'll start with a common tabby cat. Yet again, pull these images off of Google, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and plot some of the facial layout. Cats have a very almost oval shape, but they still have this coarse circle face. So, this triangle. The nose, when straight on, almost makes a triangle in the face. Very angular, but also at the same time more circular. It's kind of like the opposite of a dog in more ways than one. It's not a pun intended or anything. It's just dogs have a more blocky face, while cats have a more round face, and dogs will have a more round nose and round ears, while cats have more angular nose and more angular ears. See, there's the half line point. Cat eyes, if you can see on this tabby, are actually a little higher than on the dog that we saw. And so, stuff like that, even subtle things like that, can really help distinguish the difference between if it's a cat or a dog. I know a lot, once you start to get into a more cartoony look and aspect, often animals kind of start to look the same. You'll have cats and dogs, and you're just like, I don't know what species of what that is, or it also helps give a lot more personality, because different species can convey different types of emotions, feelings, or even character types. So you can see here how I'm breaking up the face. So now I can use that to figure out and make my own 3/4 proportion drawing. Start with a circle, divide it in half, 3/4. So there's the dividing line, the line of symmetry in the face, but in a 3D style, it'll have curvature to the face. The eyes will be slightly above, give space for the nose. Now this cat muzzle here, you can see, doesn't actually come out that far. It's almost the same as where the nose starts and the top of the eye. So using that as a proportion, I can then do this. And then it also helps me figure out where to place the rest of the mouth. I do another line of symmetry and divide to help figure out placement, keep things more consistent. Add some of that oval shape. Also, I've noticed the ears attach in like a half circle shape. It's not seen here on the left, but it is seen over here on the right, and that's important to different angles. They can give so much more visual information that you need to construct what you're drawing. Triangle. So, and also one thing that can help with ears, I'll draw how it connects sometimes if I'm having trouble with placement. Because sometimes seeing how it would connect to the head can really help solve some of those just kind of almost logic issues of where it would go. So here I have a pretty good foundation of a cat's face in regards to proportions, muzzle length, layout. Yet again, these are all things that you can learn and utilize any species. You can study images, you can continue to apply them. I always encourage looking at real life animals. If you have a pet cat or pet dog, I mean, sit down and like just sketch out as many times as you can that same animal from different angles, different poses. You can even do the same with lighting and shading. I'll probably do a video in the future on that. But I have my own cat. I've done sketches of her. It's really useful to also take from life. If you ever go to the zoo, I encourage you to just spend a day just going around sketching different animals, or even taking photos of them to use as reference later, so you have your own references that if you want to completely draw from, you can, without causing any issue of stealing, tracing, or copyright. And so just to help it give a complete example, I'm also going to show difference between, not really different species, but it's still kind of the same of different species, but different varieties in a general species. So here you can see I have a cheetah and I have an African wild dog. Both of these animals are very different than a cat or a dog in regards to proportions and stuff, or so you would think. Sometimes you'll find things that are very similar. Yet again, you'll see here the little eyebrow and end of the muzzle. You'll see that's very much half and half, just like we saw in the cat just a moment ago. Well, over here on this dog, you'll see it's the nose and the full forehead that are just about the same length. So there's some things that you can use to help figure out that will be pretty consistent. Well, over here you can see how it attaches. It's more of like a U shape, and same over here. So both of those are pretty different than the dog and the cat we saw before. But always, always, always refer to original species images when you're going to figure out proportions. Obviously, if it's an original species, it's totally made up, you'll have to figure out what proportions are unique to that species without using real images. And that's when it comes kind of tricky of what crosses that line of directly copying and what is reference studying, stuff like that. As always, you'll always want to respect what the artist has stated, and the same with photographers or anybody else. Most educational sites would not care whatsoever if you're studying the photos they take and post, because the point is for education, and studying is a form of learning. So with that, I hope this helps with proportions. I hope it helps with facial structures, just in general. If you have any ideas for video questions that you want answered, please let me know. I hope to do more videos in the future on art, specifically furry art in regards to maybe what if it's lighting or layers or proportions. Please don't ask me to do a video on animation quite yet. I have played around some with animation, but I'm not the best at it. And I know a couple of you guys saw that I have Blender downloaded on my laptop, and I'm trying to figure out how to use that, so don't ask for any 3D anything yet, please. I don't know how to do that yet. But I hope to hear from you guys in the future, and this is all I have for this video, and I hope to see you all later. Bye.